The night Luciano Marti walked into my bakery with blood on his hands, I knew my father's ghost had finally caught up to me. But let me take you back. Back to where silence became my only weapon. Back to the restaurant where secrets dripped from crystal chandeliers like poison. They say you can tell everything about a person by watching their hands. The way fingers curl around a wine glass. The tremor in a signature. The pause before a lie. I learned that from my father before the Mafia crushed him. My name is Nalani Cross, and for 3 years I served Manhattan's most dangerous people their meals while they planned murders over medium-rare steaks. Rivolo's wasn't just a restaurant. It was a confessional booth where the rich came to sin in private. Rain hammered the tall windows that October night. Jazz floated through the dining room like smoke. I moved between tables in my black uniform, invisible as always. That's how I survived. By being the girl nobody remembered. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. The kitchen doors swung open. My manager Therese rushed out, her dark skin glossy with sweat. Table 12. VIP reservation. Madame Silvana Moretti. My tray nearly slipped from my hands. Moretti. The name that destroyed my father. The name that turned our bakery into rubble and my childhood into ash. The name I'd spent 6 years running from, only to serve at dinner on fine china. You good? Therese whispered. I nodded, smiled that empty smile I'd perfected. Always. But my pulse hammered against my ribs like fists on a locked door. Madame Silvana entered at 8 sharp. 2 bodyguards flanked her, their jackets bulging with weapons nobody acknowledged. She moved like royalty, silver hair swept into a perfect bun, pearls at her throat catching the light. 70 years old and still commanded every room she entered. Then I saw her hands. They moved in quick, fluid gestures. Sign language. She was asking for her usual table, for chamomile tea, for privacy. But her bodyguards just stared at her, lost. The other servers backed away. Nobody wanted to deal with complications. Complications meant longer shifts, smaller tips, awkward silences that killed the rhythm of service. But I stepped forward. My hands lifted slowly. I signed. Good evening, ma'am. Your table is ready. Would you like lemon with your tea? Time stopped. Madame Silvana's eyes, sharp and gray as winter storms, locked onto mine. For 3 heartbeats, she just stared. Then her face cracked open into something I hadn't expected. A smile. Real and warm and desperately grateful. You sign? Her hands asked. My father taught me. I signed back. Before he died. She studied my face like she was memorizing it. Like she was seeing something nobody else could see. Then she signed. What was your father's name? My throat closed. The answer sat on my tongue like a grenade. Henri Cross. The baker your husband destroyed. The man who hung himself in our apartment because the Marti family took everything. But I just smiled and signed. Someone who understood the language of silence. She nodded slowly. Something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition? Suspicion? I couldn't tell. That night, she stayed for 2 hours. I brought her tea, her meal, her dessert. We barely spoke. But every time I approached, her hands would move. Small conversations. Questions about my life, my work, whether I liked the rain. I lied about everything except the rain. When she left, she pressed $100 bill into my palm. Her hands moved one last time. Same time next week? I nodded. As her car pulled away into the storm, I unfolded the bill. Tucked inside was a small note in elegant handwriting. Thank you for giving me a voice tonight. My hands shook as I read it again. And again. Because 6 years ago, her family had silenced mine forever. Now she wanted me to be her voice. The universe, I realized, had a sick sense of humor. But as I stood there in the rain-soaked doorway, watching her taillights disappear, one thought burned through my mind like a fuse. If she needed a voice, maybe I could make her hear the truth she'd been deaf to all along. What would you do if the family that destroyed yours suddenly needed your help? Drop your answer below because this story is just beginning, and trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Madame Silvana came back the next Thursday, and the Thursday after that, and the one after that. It became a ritual neither of us named, but both of us needed. Every week, same table by the window, same chamomile tea, same quiet understanding that the world outside didn't exist for 90 minutes. She never brought bodyguards anymore. Just herself, her purse, and that look in her eyes like she was visiting a sanctuary. I should have hated her. Should have spit in her tea. Should have signed every cruel thing my father screamed before he tied that rope around his neck. But I didn't. Because when you spend enough time with someone in silence, you see things words hide. And what I saw in Madame Silvana wasn't the monster I'd imagined. It was something worse. Loneliness. The kind that carves you hollow from the inside. The kind that makes you smile at strangers because your own family stopped looking at you years ago. Do you have children? I signed one evening while refilling her teacup. Her hands froze, then moved slowly. One son, Luciano. Is he good to you? The pause stretched too long. He protects me. That's different from goodness. I set the teapot down gently. What's the difference? She looked out the rain-streaked window. Her fingers trembled as they moved. Protection is duty. Goodness is choice. My son does what he must, not always what he should. Something twisted in my chest. This woman, wrapped in silk and pearls, sitting in the restaurant her blood money paid for, admitting her own son treated her like a responsibility instead of a person. I signed. Maybe he doesn't know another way. Maybe I never taught him one. We sat in that truth for a while. The jazz played on. Other diners laughed and clinked glasses. But at table 12, two women connected by tragedy they didn't discuss built something fragile and strange. Trust. On her 5th visit, she did something that changed everything. She pulled out a small leather journal and wrote something down, then tore out the page, folded it twice, and slid it across the table. I stared at it. What is this? Her hands moved. Something I should have written 20 years ago. Why give it to me? Because you listen without judgment. Because your hands speak truth even when your mouth stays silent. Because I think you understand what it means to carry secrets that would destroy you if anyone knew. My breath caught. She knew. Maybe not everything. Maybe not my father's name or the bakery or the suicide note. But she knew I wasn't just some random waitress who happened to sign. She knew I was here for a reason. I don't want to read this. I signed, pushing the paper back. She pushed it toward me again. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to keep it safe. If something happens to me, you'll know what to do. Nothing's going to happen to you. Her smile was sad and ancient. We both know that's not true. Before I could respond, the restaurant door opened, and he walked in. Luciano Mariti. I'd seen photos. Grainy surveillance shots in old newspaper articles about alleged organized crime connections. But nothing prepared me for the real thing. Tall. Dark suit sharp enough to cut. Hair slicked back, revealing a face carved from stone and severity. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, which technically his family did. Every server straightened. Every conversation dropped a few decibels. Even the jazz seemed to quiet. Power didn't announce itself. It just existed, and everyone adjusted around it. His eyes swept the room and landed on his mother, then shifted to me. I felt the weight of his stare like hands around my throat. His gaze traveled from my face to the folded paper on the table to his mother's guilty expression. He crossed the room in 10 seconds flat. Mother. His voice was low, controlled, dangerous in its calmness. Madame Silvana's hands moved quickly. Luciano, this is Nalani. She's been. I know who she is. He cut her off without looking away from me. Every employee gets vetted. My stomach dropped. Then you know she's been kind to me. Silvana signed, her movements sharp with defiance. Kindness is a commodity. His English had the faintest Italian edge, like an accent hidden beneath expensive education. Everyone wants something. I force myself to meet his eyes. I want to do my job and go home. That's all. That's so. He picked up the folded paper. What's this? A recipe, Madame Silvana signed quickly. I asked her to write down her tea blend.
Lie.
Beautiful, protective lie. But Luciano didn't believe it. I could see the calculation behind his dark eyes, the way his jaw tightened, the barely perceptible flex of his fingers around the paper. He tucked it into his jacket pocket. I'll see you at home, Mother. It wasn't a request. Madame Silvana gathered her purse with shaking hands. She signed to me one last time. Next Thursday. I nodded. As they left, Luciano glanced back. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes promised something clear as glass. He was watching me now, and in the Marty family, being watched was the first step toward being erased. If you were Nalani, would you run or stay? Because something tells me that paper he just took isn't going to stay folded for long. Luciano came back alone 3 nights later. The restaurant was nearly empty. Just 2 lingering couples finishing dessert and Marcus, the bartender, wiping down glasses with practiced indifference. I was rolling silverware in the corner when the door opened. A cold November air rushed in with him. He didn't look at the host stand, didn't ask for a table, just walked straight to where I sat and pulled out the chair across from me. We need to talk. My hands kept moving, fork, knife, spoon. Fold, roll. I'm working. You're off in 20 minutes. I checked. Of course he did. I set down the napkin and met his stare. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Sharp cheekbones. A small scar above his left eyebrow. Eyes that looked black in dim light, but probably turned amber in sun. What do you want? He pulled out the folded paper. My pulse spiked. This isn't a recipe. I stayed quiet. It's a confession. He smoothed it on the table between us. I couldn't see the words from where I sat, but I saw his reaction to them. The tightness around his mouth. The way his thumb pressed into the paper's edge like he wanted to tear it. Your mother asked me to keep it safe. That's all I know. You read it?
No.
Why not? Because it wasn't meant for me. He leaned back, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. You're different from the others here. They see me and either freeze or flirt. You do neither. Maybe I just don't care who you are. Everyone cares who I am. Fear or greed. That's how the world works. I finally looked at him directly. Then maybe your world is smaller than you think. Something flickered across his face.
Surprise?
Irritation? Respect? It vanished before I could name it. Do you know what my family does? I know what people say you do. And you still agreed to be my mother's confidant. I agreed to be kind to a lonely woman. That's not a crime.
No.
His voice dropped. But ignorance is dangerous. And you don't strike me as ignorant. The air between us felt charged. Like standing too close to a live wire. What's your point? I asked. My point is you're playing a game you don't understand. My mother is fragile. Emotional. She trusts too easily. And you don't trust at all. I can't afford to. I leaned forward. Then why are you here? If I'm so dangerous, why not just fire me? His jaw worked. For a moment he said nothing. Then, because she's happy for the first time in 5 years. And despite what you think, I'm not a monster who takes that away from her. The confession landed between us like a stone in still water. But, he continued, voice hardening again, if I find out you're using her for money, for access, for anything, I will end you. Not loudly. Not publicly. You'll just disappear. Understand? I should have been terrified. Should have nodded and apologized and begged for mercy. Instead, I said, I don't fear danger, Mr. Marty. Just lies. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means your mother isn't fragile. She's trapped. There's a difference. And maybe instead of threatening the one person who treats her like a human being, you should ask yourself why she needs to confess anything at all. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Luciano stood slowly, buttoned his jacket, looked down at me with an expression I couldn't read. My mother mentioned your father taught you sign language. My blood turned to ice. What was his name? The question hung in the air like a noose. Does it matter? I managed. Everything matters. I forced myself to breathe normally, to keep my hands steady.
Henri.
Cross. He repeated it slowly. Cross. Then walked away without another word. I sat there for 10 minutes after he left, staring at the folded confession on the table. He'd left it behind. Whether as a test or a trap, I didn't know. But my hands shook as I picked it up and read Madame Silvana's elegant handwriting. I knew what my husband did to the small businesses. I signed the papers. I am not innocent, but I was silent. And silence makes you complicit. I cannot undo the past, but I can confess it, for whatever that's worth now. My vision blurred. She knew. She'd always known. And now her son was digging into my father's name. The hunter just became the hunted. What happens when the person you're trying to expose starts exposing you? Stay with me because this storm is about to break. The background check came back in 48 hours. I know because that's when Luciano appeared at my apartment. I lived in a 4th-floor walk-up in Washington Heights. Peeling paint. Radiator that clanked like ghosts in chains. But it was mine, paid for with cash, no paper trail, no connections to the girl I used to be. Until he knocked at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. I opened the door in my pajamas, coffee mug in hand, and froze. Luciano stood in my hallway in a black coat, holding a manila folder. How did you find where I live? I find everyone. He stepped inside without invitation. His eyes swept my studio apartment in 3 seconds. The pull-out couch. The hot plate. The single window overlooking the fire escape. Cozy, he said flatly. Get out. He dropped the folder on my counter. Henri Cross. Born 1965. Opened Crossflower and Soul Bakery in 1998. Forced to sell in 2011 when the city rezoned the block. Couldn't afford relocation. Declared bankruptcy. Died by suicide March 2012. Each word hit like a fist. Your father, Luciano continued, voice clinical, owned property on what is now the Maradi Plaza development. One of 43 businesses displaced. Displaced. I laughed, bitter and sharp. That's a nice word for destroyed. He was compensated. $20,000 for a business worth 10 times that. You call that compensation? Luciano's expression didn't change. I call it legal. Legal doesn't mean right.
No.
But it means done. Finalized. Over. I set my mug down before I threw it. Is that why you're here? To tell me my grief has an expiration date. I'm here because now I understand. He tapped the folder. You didn't stumble into my mother's life. You planned it. I work at a restaurant she happens to visit. Rivolo's is owned by a Maradi subsidiary. You applied 2 months after she started eating there regularly. You specifically requested evening shifts that overlap her schedule. My stomach dropped. He stepped closer. So, let's stop pretending. You want revenge. You befriended my mother to hurt my family. The question is how? I could barely breathe. He'd unraveled everything. I wanted to understand. I whispered. Understand what? How people like you sleep at night. How you build empires on other people's graves and call it business. His jaw tightened. I didn't kill your father. But your father did. And you benefit from it every single day. Silence. Heavy and suffocating. Then Luciano did something unexpected. He sat down on my couch, ran a hand through his hair, looked suddenly, impossibly tired. My father was a lot of things. Most of them terrible. His voice was quieter now. When he died, I inherited an empire built on violence I didn't commit and can't undo. So yes, I benefit. And yes, that makes me complicit. But I'm trying to do something different. Different how? By not being him. He looked up at me. The businesses are legitimate now. The violence stopped. The old ways are dying. Tell that to my father. I can't.
He's dead.
And I'm sorry for that. Genuinely. The apology landed wrong. Too late. Too small. Sorry doesn't rebuild a life.
No.
He stood. But maybe this does. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed me the screen. A bank transfer. Pending. Made out to Nalani Cross. $500,000. My vision swam. What is this? Restitution. For what my father took from yours. I stumbled back. I don't want your money. It's not mine. It's yours. What you were owed 13 years ago. You think you can just pay me off? Make this go away? I think, he said carefully, that I can't change the past, but I can acknowledge the debt. What you do with it is your choice. I stared at the number. $500,000. Enough to start over. To leave New York. To finally breathe. But it felt like blood money. Why? I asked. Why do this? He moved toward the door. Stopped. Turned back. Because my mother's confession was right. Silence makes you complicit. And I'm tired of being silent about things I can actually fix. Then he left. I stood in my apartment, shaking, staring at a pending transaction that could either save me or destroy the last piece of my father's memory. Because if I took this money, what did that make me? Bought. Silenced. Complicit. Just like everyone else. Would you take the money? Or would you burn it all down? Drop your answer below because Nalani's about to make a choice that changes everything. I didn't take the money, but I didn't refuse it either. For 3 days, I let it sit there in digital limbo. Pending. Waiting. Taunting me every time I checked my account balance. Madame Silvana came back that Thursday like nothing had happened. She signed. You look tired. I poured her tea with hands that trembled. Long week. Luciano spoke to you. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Her fingers moved slowly. I'm sorry. He protects me in ways that hurt others. He doesn't know how to stop. He offered me money. She went still. Did you take it? Not yet. Why not? I set the teapot down and signed back. Because I don't know if accepting it means forgiving what happened. And I'm not ready to forgive. Something cracked in her expression. She reached across the table and took my hand. The first time we'd touched beyond passing plates. Her palm was soft. Warm. Shaking slightly. She signed with her other hand. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. So you can finally put down what you've been carrying. Tears burned my eyes. I don't know how. Neither do I. She squeezed my hand. But maybe we learn together. The moment shattered when the restaurant door slammed open. Marcus, the bartender, rushed over. Nalani, turn on the news. He pulled out his phone and thrust it toward me. The screen showed a breaking news banner. Maradi matriarch hospitalized after collapse. My heart stopped. But Madame Silvana was sitting right in front of me. Then I read the timestamp. 2 hours ago. She'd collapsed at home. They'd taken her to Mount Sinai. Critical condition. But she was here. I looked up at her, confused. She smiled sadly and signed. I left the hospital. Luciano doesn't know. You're supposed to be dying, yes. Her hands moved calmly. Heart complications. The doctors give me weeks. Maybe less. The room tilted. That's why you wrote the confession, I whispered. She nodded. I don't have time for silence anymore. Does Luciano know? He knows I'm sick. He doesn't know I've accepted it. I couldn't process this. Couldn't breathe. You need to go back. I needed to see you first. She pulled an envelope from her purse. This is for him. Give it to Luciano after I'm gone. Not before. I can't. You can. Her eyes were fierce now. You're the only one who can. Because you understand what it means to lose a parent to something you couldn't control. He'll need someone who understands that. He'll hate me. Maybe. But he'll listen to you. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. Then mine. Then Marcus's. All the same alert. Madame Silvana Maradi, matriarch of the Maradi family, passed away at Mount Sinai Hospital. She was 70 years old. I looked at the woman sitting across from me. Still breathing. Still here. How? She smiled. I have 10 minutes before this body catches up with the news. That's all I needed. And then I understood. She'd known. She'd planned this final meeting. This final conversation. This final goodbye. Thank you, she signed, tears streaming down her face, for giving me a voice when no one else would listen. I grabbed her hand, held it tight. Thank you, I signed back, for teaching me that silence can be powerful, but speaking truth is stronger. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the light was dimmer. Tell Luciano, she whispered aloud, her voice raspy from years of disuse, that he's allowed to be good, not just powerful. Then her hand went slack in mine. The woman who started this whole story just ended it with a whisper. But her secrets? Those are just beginning to explode. Hit that subscribe button because chapters 6 through 10 are going to shatter everything you think you know. They found her body in my arms. The paramedics burst through Rivolo's doors 7 minutes after she stopped breathing. Luciano was 30 seconds behind them, his face a mask of controlled devastation that cracked the moment he saw me cradling his mother's head. Get away from her. His voice was barely human. I didn't move. Couldn't. Her final words still echoed in my skull. He's allowed to be good, not just powerful. The paramedics pried me away, started compressions even though we all knew it was pointless. She'd been gone before they arrived. Before the sirens. Before the world understood that Madame Silvana Marchetti had spent her last conscious moments with a waitress instead of her son. Luciano stood frozen, watching them work, watching them fail. Then his eyes found mine across the chaos. And I saw it. The exact moment grief turned to rage. 2 days later, they came for me at dawn. Not cops. Worse. 3 men in dark suits with dead eyes and questions that felt like knives. Why was she with you? What did she tell you? Where's the envelope? I'd hidden it. The one Madame Silvana gave me for Luciano. Tucked it inside my father's old cookbook, the only thing I'd kept from the bakery. They tore apart my apartment for 2 hours and found nothing, because they didn't know how to look for ghosts. When they finally left, my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't unlock my phone. 14 missed calls from Therese. 9 from Marcus. 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I called it back. Nolani Cross? A woman's voice. Professional. Cold. Who is this? Mount Sinai Hospital. We have Madame Marchetti's personal effects. She listed you as someone to contact regarding her final arrangements. My throat closed. I'm not family. No. But she left specific instructions. Can you come in today? I should have said no. Should have run. Should have taken Luciano's blood money and disappeared into whatever life people build when they escape their past. Instead, I went. The hospital gave me a small cardboard box. Inside, her pearl necklace, a gold watch, reading glasses, and a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. She requested you receive these personally, the nurse said. No one else. I opened the journal with trembling fingers. The first page stopped my heart. A list of names. 43 of them. Beside each name, a date and an amount. Henri Cross, March 2011, $380,000 actual value. $20,000 paid. My father's name. His stolen worth. Written in Madame Silvana's perfect handwriting. I flipped through more pages. More names. More thefts. A decade of documentation. Proof of every business the Marchetti family had crushed, every family they'd ruined, every crime they'd committed under the cover of legal paperwork. This wasn't a journal. It was a confession. A complete, detailed, undeniable confession. And Madame Silvana had given it to me. The envelope she'd left for Luciano suddenly felt heavier in my bag. Because I understood now. She hadn't just wanted him to know the truth. She'd wanted him to face it. To choose between protecting his family's legacy and doing what was right. She'd put that choice in my hands. I sat in that hospital waiting room for an hour, holding evidence that could destroy the Marchetti empire. That could give my father justice. That could burn everything Luciano had spent years trying to rebuild. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. I know you have something of my mother's. Meet me at the bakery site. Midnight. Come alone, or don't come at all. The bakery site. Where my father's dream used to stand before they bulldozed it into luxury condos. where this whole nightmare started. She handed me a weapon that could end a dynasty. But weapons have a way of destroying the person holding them too. What would you do with proof that powerful people don't want found? The construction fence still surrounded the lot at midnight. 12 years later, and they still hadn't finished building. Like the ground itself rejected what they were trying to create. I climbed through a gap in the chain link, journal tucked inside my jacket. The November wind cut through me like guilt. Luciano stood in the center of the empty lot. No bodyguards. No backup. Just him and the skeleton of unfinished buildings reaching toward a starless sky. You came, he said. You threatened me. I asked. There's a difference. I stopped 10 feet away. Close enough to see his face in the construction lights. Far enough to run if needed. This is where it stood, I said. My father's bakery. Luciano looked around. I know. Did you ever see it? Before?
No.
I was in college when my father bought this block. Stole this block.
He didn't argue.
Just stood there, hands in his coat pockets, looking more tired than dangerous. She died in your arms, he said finally. Why? Because she wanted someone who understood. Understood what? What it's like to love someone whose choices you can't defend. His jaw worked. Did she suffer? The question cracked something in me. Because underneath the power and the threats and the blood money, he was just a son who'd missed his mother's last breath. No, I lied. She went peacefully. He nodded slowly. Thank you. We stood in silence. The wind howled through steel beams. She left you something? I said. His eyes snapped to mine. The envelope. I pulled it from my jacket, held it out. He stared at it like it might explode. What's in it? I don't know. She said to give it to you after she was gone. Not before. He took it, turned it over in his hands.
Didn't open it.
There's something else, I said. I showed him the journal. His face went pale as I flipped through pages. Watched him read his family's crimes in his mother's handwriting. Watched him realize what this meant. Where did you get this? Hospital gave it to me. Your mother's final effects. Why would she give this to you? Maybe because she knew you'd try to bury it. Maybe because she trusted me to do what's right. His hands tightened on the envelope. And what's right, Nalani? Destroying what's left of my family? Ruining hundreds of people who work for legitimate businesses now. Giving justice to the families you destroyed. My father destroyed. Not me. But you benefit. Every single day. He stepped closer. Eyes burning. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see their faces when I walk through buildings bought with blood? You think I sleep well at night? I think you sleep in mansions built on graves. And I think you're so focused on the past that you can't see I'm trying to build something different. Different how? By paying me off. By erasing evidence. By making amends. His voice cracked. By trying to be better than the man who raised me. But if you release that journal, everything I've built collapses. Not just me. Hundreds of employees. Charities we fund. Programs we support. All gone. My father's gone too. That didn't seem to matter before. It matters now. He opened the envelope with shaking hands. Pulled out a single sheet of paper. Read it. Then showed me. Madame Silvana's final letter. Not a confession this time. Instructions. Luciano, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry for the burden I'm leaving you. The journal contains every crime your father committed that I witnessed. I documented them not for revenge, but for accountability. What you do with this information will define who you become. Not who your father was. Not who I failed to be. Who you choose to be. I pray you choose truth. Even if it costs everything. Especially if it costs everything. With love, Mother. I read it twice. Felt the weight of her final wish settle over both of us. She's asking you to destroy yourself, I whispered. She's asking me to do what's right. Finally. He handed the journal back to me. It's yours. Do what you think my mother would want. What I think or what she wrote. Both. Neither. I don't know anymore. He looked broken. Human. But I'm not going to stop you. If this is how her story ends, then that's how it ends. I held the journal against my chest, felt its weight, its power, its terrible responsibility. The money you offered, I said. Is it still available? Yes. Then here's what I want. You take this journal. You read every name, every theft, every crime,
And you make it right.
all of it. Not with blood money payments that buy silence, with real restitution, public acknowledgement, foundation programs that rebuild what your father destroyed. That will take years. Then you better start now. He stared at me. And if I do this, if I actually follow through, then maybe your mother's death meant something. Maybe mine is too. I handed him the journal. He took it like a man receiving his own death sentence. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. Neither do I. But she believed you could. That has to count for something. We stood in the ruins of my father's dream, holding the evidence of his destruction, choosing between revenge and redemption. And for the first time since this started, I understood what Madame Silvana had been trying to teach us both. Justice isn't about evening the score. It's about breaking the cycle. He's holding the weapon now, but will he use it to destroy himself or rebuild what his family broke? Stay with me because the twist coming next changes everything you thought you knew. I should have known peace doesn't last in the world of men who build empires on bones. 2 weeks after I gave Luciano the journal, someone else came looking for it. His name was Dante Raines. I learned this when he walked into the rebuilt bakery I'd opened with Luciano's restitution money. The sign above the door read, Henry's Legacy, in my father's favorite font. Dante looked like money that didn't need to announce itself. Charcoal suit, silver watch, smile that belonged in boardrooms where people's lives got decided over lunch. Nalani Cross. He said my name like he was tasting it. Beautiful space. Your father would be proud. Every instinct screamed danger. We're not open yet, I said. I'm not here for bread. He sat at the counter, uninvited. I'm here about a journal. My blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Madame Silvana's confession. Complete documentation of Maradi crimes. Very thorough woman. Very dangerous woman. For someone who couldn't speak. Who are you? Someone with a vested interest in certain truths staying buried. He pulled out his phone. Showed me a photo. My stomach dropped. It was my apartment. 2 weeks ago. The day they'd searched it. But this photo was taken from across the street. Through my window. Showing me hiding the envelope in my father's cookbook. You've been watching me. I've been watching the Maradi family. For 20 years. You're just collateral. He swiped to another photo. This one showed Luciano and me at the construction site. Handing over the journal. Touching scene. Very dramatic. But here's what you don't know. He leaned forward. Your father wasn't just a baker, Nalani. He was my accountant. The room tilted. That's a lie. Is it? Henri Cross. Columbia accounting degree. Worked for D'Angelo Financial Services before opening his bakery. D'Angelo was a shell company. My shell company. Your father kept books for operations the Maradi family knew nothing about. You're lying.
I'm clarifying.
He pulled out a weathered photograph. Set it on the counter. My father. Younger. Standing between two men. One was Don Maradi. The other was Dante. I couldn't breathe. Your father knew where all the bodies were buried. Literally. When the Maradis came for his bakery, it wasn't random expansion. It was targeted. Because they found out who he worked for. Who he'd been protecting. My father was a good man. Your father was a survivor. Like you. Like all of us. But he kept records. Insurance, he called it. A ledger of every transaction, every crime, every payment that flowed through my operations. I don't have any ledger.
No.
But Madame Silvana did. She found it when her husband died. That's why she documented everything. She was trying to piece together which crimes were Don Maradi's and which were mine. Because someone betrayed your father. Someone told the Maradis he was my bookkeeper. And she wanted to know who. My hands shook. Why are you telling me this? Because that ledger is still out there. hidden somewhere your father put it before he died. And Madame Silvana's journal is the map to finding it. Luciano has the journal. I know. That's the problem. Dante stood. Because when he reads it carefully, really carefully, he'll realize his father didn't destroy your father's bakery for expansion.
He did it for me. As a favor.
To silence someone who knew too much. The implications crashed over me like waves. You used the Maretis to kill my father. I used the Maretis to protect my interests. Your father's death was unfortunate. But business is business. You're a monster.
I am practical.
And now you're going to be practical too. He slid a business card across the counter. When Luciano figures out the truth, he's going to come looking for that ledger. When he does, you call me. Because that ledger doesn't just implicate the Maretis. It implicates half the politicians in New York. And those men don't forgive exposure. Why would I help you? Because if you don't, you'll end up like your father.
Convenu suicide.
Tragic story. Nobody asks questions. He walked toward the door.
Stopped.
Turned back. Your father hid something in this building. Before they demolished it. Something he knew would survive the bulldozers. Madame Silvana figured it out. That's why she gave you that location. The construction site. She wasn't being sentimental. She was telling you where to dig. Then he left. I stood in my father's rebuilt bakery, surrounded by the smell of fresh paint and old ghosts, understanding that nothing was what I thought. My father wasn't just a victim. He was a player. Madame Silvana wasn't just guilty. She was investigating. And Luciano wasn't just trying to make amends. He was about to uncover the one secret that could destroy everyone. I grabbed my coat, headed for the door. Because if there was something buried at that construction site, I needed to find it before the wrong people did. The dead aren't done talking yet. And what they buried is about to explode everything. You still with me? Because we're about to dig up something that should have stayed buried. I went back to the construction site at 3 a.m. with a shovel and a flashlight and the certainty that I was about to do something that couldn't be undone. The lot was different now. In 2 weeks, they'd poured foundation for the eastern building. Concrete, where dirt used to be. Progress erasing history like it always does. But I knew where my father's bakery had stood. Southeast corner. Where the old brick oven used to be. Where he'd spent 16-hour days turning flour into art. Where he'd hidden his insurance policy. I started digging in the one section they hadn't paved yet. Behind the construction trailer. Under the tarp where they stored equipment. The shovel hit something solid after 20 minutes. Not concrete. Metal. I cleared away dirt with shaking hands. Found the edges. A lockbox. Industrial grade. Sealed with a combination lock. My father's birthday. My birthday. My mother's birthday. None of them worked. I sat back, frustrated. Thought about everything I knew. Everything he taught me. Then I remembered. The day he opened the bakery. August 14th, 1998. He'd called it his second birth. The day he stopped working for other people's dreams and started building his own. August 14th, 98. The lock clicked open. Inside, a leather-bound ledger. USB drives. Photographs. Documents. And a letter addressed to me in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Nalani, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're old enough to understand. I was never just a baker. I kept books for dangerous men because it paid better than anything else available to someone who looked like me in corporate America. I told myself it was temporary. It never is. By the time you were born, I was in too deep to escape. So I kept records. Everything. Names, dates, amounts, crimes. Not for blackmail. For protection. If something happened to me, this was your inheritance. Truth. Use it wisely. Use it to be better than I was. I love you. I'm sorry. Dad. Tears blurred my vision. He'd known. He'd always known he was living on borrowed time. I opened the ledger. Page after page of transactions. Dante Raines. Don Murray. Police commissioners. Judges. City council members. A spiderweb of corruption spanning 2 decades. And at the center of it all, a single transaction dated March 2011. Payment from D. Rains to D. Marty. $2 million. Memo. Henri Cross situation resolved. My father had been murdered. Not driven to suicide. Murdered. Paid for. Executed because he knew too much and Dante needed him silent. And Don Maretti had taken the contract. I photographed every page with shaking hands. Uploaded them to 3 different cloud accounts. Sent copies to my email.
To Therese.
To Marcus. Insurance policies of my own. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Coming from different directions. I grabbed the lockbox and ran. Nolani Cross. Dante's voice echoed across the lot. You really should have called me first. I ducked behind a concrete pylon. Saw flashlight beams cutting through darkness. At least 4 men. Maybe more. You can't run from this, Dante called out. That ledger belongs to people who don't forgive theft. Another voice cut through the night. Deeper. Angrier. Luciano. Get away from her, Rains. I peeked around the pylon. Saw Luciano standing at the lot's entrance. Alone. Unarmed. Facing down 4 armed men like he was bulletproof. Maybe he thought he was. This isn't your business anymore, Marty. Your father's dead. Your mother's dead. Their sins died with them. Their sins are mine now. And I'm done running from them. Dante laughed. Noble. Stupid. But noble. Walk away, and you get to keep building your redemption story. Stay, and you learn exactly what your father did to her father. Luciano's eyes found mine across the darkness. I already know. You know he took the contract? I know everything. I read the journal. Every page. Every name. Including yours. Dante's smile faded. Then you know what happens to people who threaten to expose this.
Yeah, they die.
Like Henri Cross. Like the 42 others my father silenced for you. Luciano pulled out his phone. Held it up. Which is why I've already sent copies of both documents to the FBI, the Manhattan DA, and 3 major newspapers. It's over, Dante. All of it. The silence that followed was murderous. You just destroyed your own family.
No.
I freed it. Luciano looked at me. And hers. Dante moved his hand toward his jacket. Everything happened too fast. Gunshot. Concrete exploding beside Luciano's head. Him diving for cover. Me running with the lockbox. Dante's men chasing. More gunshots. Sirens in the distance. Someone grabbing my arm. Luciano. Pulling me behind a construction vehicle. Breathing hard. You called the cops? I gasped. I called everyone. He showed me his phone. Text messages. Emails.
Sent.
Delivered. Irreversible. You really did it. You burned it all down. Yeah, I did. He looked at me. My mother was right. Sometimes justice costs everything. Police lights flooded the lot. Dante and his men scattered like roaches. But we stayed. We stayed and we waited, and we watched as the empire built on my father's silence finally collapsed under the weight of truth. 2 families destroyed by secrets. 1 ledger that exposed everything. But the real question is, what happens to the survivors when there's nothing left to fight for? 3 months later, I stood in my bakery watching the morning light turn flour dust into gold. Henry's legacy opened officially on a Tuesday.
Small ceremony.
Just Therese, Marcus, and a handful of neighborhood folks who remembered my father. And Luciano. He stood in the back corner, hands in his pockets, watching me cut the ribbon like he was afraid to get too close. Like proximity might contaminate the one good thing he'd managed not to destroy. The Mardi Empire had collapsed exactly how you'd expect. Federal indictments. Asset seizures. Prosecutors fighting over who got to make their career on the case. Luciano had cooperated with everything. Testified. Provided documents. Dismantled his own legacy with the precision of someone who'd finally figured out that building something clean meant burning down everything dirty first. They'd offered him immunity. He'd refused. Said he needed to face what his name actually meant. What it had always meant. So now he waited for trial. Free on bail. Wealthy enough that lawyers could probably get him minimal time. But he'd already told me he wouldn't fight it. I need to pay for what I benefited from, he'd said, even if I didn't commit the crimes myself. After the ceremony, after the neighbors left with free bread and good wishes, Luciano approached the counter. Congratulations, he said. Thank you. I wiped down already clean surfaces. Avoided his eyes. You didn't have to come. I wanted to see it, what rebuilding looks like. We stood in silence, the space between us full of everything we'd destroyed to get here. I'm sorry, he said finally, for all of it, for what my father did, for what I didn't stop, for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me. I walked in, eyes open.
Still.
You deserved better. So did you. He looked surprised. Your mother thought you could be good, I continued. Not just powerful. Turns out she was right. Doesn't feel like it. Good rarely does. That's how you know it's real. He smiled. Sad and small but genuine. I'm leaving New York, he said. After the trial. After everything's settled. Starting over somewhere nobody knows my name. Where? Don't know yet. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can just be someone. Not a legacy. Sounds nice. You could come, if you wanted. The offer hung between us like a bridge over burning wreckage. I wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe we could build something clean from the ashes of everything our families destroyed. Wanted to believe love could grow in soil that toxic. But I knew better. I can't, I said softly. This bakery is my fresh start. My father's legacy. I need to see it through. He nodded. I understand. But maybe, I added, after you've served your time. After you've figured out who Luciano is when he's not a Maradi. Maybe then. Maybe then, he echoed. He left without looking back. I watched him go. Watched him walk away from power and wealth and legacy. Watched him choose the hard road because it was the right one. My father had spent his life keeping dangerous men's secrets. Madame Silvana had spent hers trapped in silent complicity. But Luciano and I? We'd chosen something different. We'd chosen truth. Even when it cost everything. Especially when it cost everything. I locked up the bakery as sunset painted the windows orange and gold. Started walking home through streets that finally felt like mine. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. My chest tightened. But when I opened the message, it wasn't a threat. It was a photo. Dante Raines. In handcuffs. Being led into federal court. Below it, a text from a number I recognize now. Luciano. Justice isn't loud. But it's patient. And it always collects its debts. Thank you for teaching me that. I smiled. Typed back. Thank you for learning. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived at the bakery. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. My father.
Young.
Smiling. Standing in front of his bakery on opening day. Behind him, the sign read, Cross Flour and Soul. And in his hand he held infant me. Both of us looking at the camera like the future was something to smile about. On the back, in Madame Silvana's handwriting, some legacies are worth fighting for. Some are worth destroying. The wisdom is knowing which is which. I hung the photo above my counter, right where everyone could see it, because that's the thing about silence and secrets and sins that span generations. They only have power if you let them stay buried. And I was done burying truth. This story started with a shy waitress and a deaf woman who spoke without words. It ends with justice whispered in the dark until the whole world finally heard it. If this story moved you, if it made you think about what you do for truth, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications, because next week we're bringing you another story about ordinary people who stood up to extraordinary evil. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have taken the money and run, or burned it all down like Nalani did? Your answer might inspire someone else to find their courage. This is more than entertainment. This is a community of people who believe truth matters. Who believe the quiet ones can change the world. Who believe that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to stay silent.
So subscribe.
comment. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because every story we tell here is a reminder that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes that whisper becomes a revolution. See you in the next story.
Stay strong.
Stay true. And never let them silence you.